whole armor of God.
What we don't know. This episode is about what's hidden in your face, hidden behind your back, and the many tricks of the devil. Nothing is quite as it seems. Now let's get into what they don't want you to know and what you do not know about what's really going on in this country. And we're going to get spiritual and start talking about spiritual matters that are completely flipped from what you think they are. So the first story is the story of the Amityville horror. This is the story that we're going to start with, and we're going to get into the murders. Today, only a handful of people really know what this saga is really about. The people who know the real truth will do anything, including commit murder, to keep it a secret. Most people know of it as mass murder or some type of spiritual haunting. But let me ask you this. Now, what have you known about the Amityville horror for real, other than it was a movie that was super popular in its time? So the first thing that I would tell you about the Amityville horror is those people were connected to the Mafia. In fact, Amityville was somewhat of a Mafia haven. Now, the well-known, some will call him Scarface, Al Capone used to spend his summer vacations in Amityville. Moving along. The truth of the matter is the real story is scarier than any darn movie. And you will find that sometimes people are much scarier than things that are hidden. This story has nothing to do with ghosts or anything paranormal. How well do you know the people that sit next to you? After all, somebody lived next to you. Slacky. Somebody lived next to Ted Bundy. Somebody lived next to Hitler. Somebody lived next to J. Edgar Hoover. How well do you know your neighbors? You have to understand what kind of town this was. This was a town of rich people who, trust me, are the wickedest people on the earth. For peace of mind, you will be killed by a rich person. Never mind a community of rich people who've lived there for years, whose mothers' mothers lived there, whose fathers' fathers lived there for years. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? Old money, old connections, and yes, old ties. When you've been somewhere for a long time and outsiders come in, it's a little awkward. You know, it's like having a new buddy. Everybody knows the feeling of having a new buddy that you're getting close with. You bring around your other friends. Hey, they may end up being great friends, but at first it's a bit awkward. That's how it is when you moved in a place where everybody knows everybody except for you. And this is where we begin the Amityville saga. And I got receipts and schedules for that. In 1974, the government offered Amityville a deal they could not refuse. The town wanted rid of a new family that came there who legally bought their house. They were loud, they were fast, they were brash, and they were not wanted by the Amityville community. On November 13th, 1974, the Defeos family were all killed in their sleep, murdered, all 6 of them, while sleeping. They were shot with a high-powered rifle, which, if you shoot that thing now, the whole neighborhood would hear it. But no one in that house moved. They were all found face down, murdered while sleeping, except for one. So if you're thinking to yourself, there had to be multiple people in there. No. They were all shot with the same rifle. Wrap your mind around that for a moment. Well, you could say, wow, that rifle shot didn't wake them up. Something must be going on. They must have been drugged like they did Fred Hampton. But the autopsy report said that none of them were drugged. The only one to survive out of that whole family was Butch, the oldest son. Butch went to jail for 25 years, sentenced to 25 years, that is. Life in prison for killing his entire family, which he never admitted to, though his story changes like the wind. But when asked, police could not answer the question of how Butch went from room to room, murdered his family with a high-powered rifle, but none of them awoke. There were signs of no struggle. Follow me now.
The standard story is basically that Ronald Defeos Jr., who was then 23 in 1974, woke up at approximately 3:15 a.m. and for reasons unknown, basically killed his entire family while they slept.
He took the rifle and shot both of his parents for sleeping in the master bedroom. Then shot his younger brothers, 2 of them. And then he went to an adjacent bedroom and shot his sister. And then he walked up to the 3rd floor bedroom and shot his sister, boy.
All the bodies were found face down with no signs of struggle. An autopsy revealed the family had not been drugged.
At the time, we were amazed that all of the bodies were found face down with their arms extended. We knew that they were all in this position at the time they were shot because the entrance and exit holes of the bullets matched with where they left the body and entered the mattresses. It almost had the appearance that they were being held at bay or told to be in a certain position at that time.
To this day, as far as I know, none of those people were drugged. So why someone wasn't able to get out of that house, it's beyond belief.
We did extensive toxicology, not only on the blood and urine, but on all of the organs that we removed, and it turned up 0, that there wasn't anything in their body. So they were cold sober at the time they were murdered.
I would have assumed that he did have an accomplice, but that's never been proven, and haven't found any evidence to indicate that.
They were each shot with a .35 Marlin. We had an experiment conducted when we were preparing for trial. The noise level of the .35 Marlin, and that Marlin could be heard 4 to 5 blocks away from the house. With all the shots that took place, or approximately 9 blasts from a Marlin. There was no evidence that any of the 6 victims had made any attempt to escape.
What was so odd is how you managed to shoot 6 people in the middle of the night in a quiet neighborhood without awakening any of the people. A shotgun blast is pretty loud. That doesn't make any sense.
Esau is baffled. His scientists, his doctors cannot figure this out.
6 people would be lying dead. How is it that 6 people would stay in bed?
I thought perhaps the bodies had been moved from their original spots. The autopsy reports show that no, they were not moved, that they were in the original places that they were when they were shot. There were no drugs found in the bloodstreams. And again, the victims are found lying face down in gas strips.
Even if they were sleeping, the report of the weapon that was used is supposed to be so loud that it would have, so to speak, almost awakened the dead.
Now let's not just gloss over that. Let's deal with this. Let's deal with it. Let's think about this for a second. These gunshots that are so loud that neighborhoods can hear it. Not just a neighborhood. You can hear a gunshot from way off. Not let alone a high-powered rifle. Now, according to the neighbors of this family, nobody heard any type of noise or anything. Now, the son that was charged denied this over and over. Now, let's just hear from him. I'm going to give him the floor a little bit and let you hear it from his mouth. Okay.
How could one person go through the house and kill 6 people the way they think they were killed? The way they, excuse me, let me correct myself. The way they said they were killed. You show me how right now. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Now, Butch said he was down in the basement getting his twerk on, getting his smoke on. He said he was drugged up.
Wasted out of his mind.
Ronald Defeo applied for parole in 1999. In his hearing, he told officials that he was downstairs, quote, using drugs, unquote, while the real killers came in and gunned down his family.
Now, the prosecutor by the name of Gerald Sullivan has said about these trials years later in a book called High Hopes. Direct quote from this book now. I still think about the Defeos case, especially about the children. I often answer about the questions that were never answered. So you gotta really just think about this for a second. Did any of the victims wake up? If so, why didn't they defend themselves? Why were all 6 found face down in death? Why didn't anyone hear the shots? Not a one person, no one in the neighborhood. We have to re-examine the whole story to answer that question. So this all took place on Ocean Avenue, a quiet, peaceful, and friendly place to live for affluent in Amityville. Now, Amity literally means friendship. Let's talk about the very powerful, we'll say, British family. It's one of the founding members of Amityville that has lived in Amityville for generations. They've been there for years. Now, next to the British home has been a vacant house that's been there for years at that time. It had 2-quarter shaped moon windows that looked like eyes. And anybody that's familiar with this story understands that this is the Amityville house. The house was actually too big for the property, so they had to build it sideways. Now, the British family once owned this house, the Amityville house that we are speaking about. Now, this rich, powerful family is sitting outside in June of 1965, trying to enjoy a beautiful sunny day like we all try to do from time to time. As they are enjoying their day, a car skirts up, smashing, hits the brakes. A man, overweight, gets out of his car and starts looking around the property. A woman then gets out the car and lets her children out of the door. Right there on the spot, the man starts barking on his wife, using foul language that had Karen and Kevin British in an uproar. Their pennies were in a bunch. At which point, Karen British said maybe we should call the police. Now, as Kevin and Karen British sit on their porch, they start thinking amongst themselves, oh, maybe they're just here to do the property. These judgmental people. But then 2 cars pulls up. And Kevin immediately recognized them as big time mobsters. And he thought, what are they doing here? And to his chagrin, the house was just purchased by the Defeos family. That's who it was who had arrived there, loud, arguing, cussing and fussing in this neighborhood that people thought was too good for them to be in anyway. See, what you guys gotta understand is the Amityville horror started way before 1973. To these people, it was their Amityville horror that these people even moved in next to them. Now, if you hip to these Kevin Karen videos, you know how frustrating it could be for people of color, people that are different, to move into places and not be harassed. So you gotta think, this is before cell phone cameras, this is before all of that. And the Italian people had a lot of stigmata on them that other races that were doing well in America did not like. Robert Defeos was allegedly known as Big Ronnie amongst the mobsters. He was well connected. On both sides of this family, they was well connected.
In the summer of 1965, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue was sold to the Defeos, a close-knit Italian Catholic family. It is a prosperous time for the city-bred Defeos, a prosperity evidenced by their move from a small Brooklyn apartment to the 6-bedroom, 2.5-story Dutch colonial on Long Island's affluent South Shore. The Defeos have 5 children: John Matthew, Mark, Allison, Dawn, and their eldest son, Ronald Jr., better known as Ronnie or Butch.
Now, the irony of all this for this family, and yes, this was a family, whether the people in that neighborhood liked that or not, they put high hopes, a sign up, high hopes, in front of their house.
Village of Amityville residents did not really like the Defeos. The Defeos were from Brooklyn. They didn't fit the South Shore atmosphere, the style. Mr. Defeo was quite loud and boisterous, so they didn't fit that persona that the village residents wanted to see in the neighborhood.
Nah. Now, you guys just gotta pay attention to what's going on. My brothers and sisters, my Latin, my Negroes, my so-called Indians out here, Native Americans out here, we know what it's like when just your presence rubs people the wrong way. We know what that's like. Now, you double that with the fact that the British family is running around telling everybody, like, these guys are mobsters. You know, we have to kind of be on our P's and Q's around these people. Now, Big Ronnie's wife, Louise, father is Mike Brigante Sr., a big-time mobster, directly tied to Carlos Gambino, a Sicilian mobster that controls the Gambino crime family, or controlled at the time. Now for the double whammy, you know, Big Ronnie's father, Rocco Defeos, another big-time mobster. Rocco's brother is Peter Defeos, a soldier in the Genovese crime family. Peter Defeos works closely with Vito Genovese, boss of the Genovese crime family. Now, just think about this, man. So, this is a problem for these people in their mind.
Both grandfathers live very heavy in the Mafia. Both grandfathers live very heavy in the Mafia. Both grandfathers live very heavy in
One more time.
Both grandfathers live very heavy in the Mafia.
Now, Big Ronnie and his older son Butch work at a Brigante car, Buick, and car dealership co-owned by Louise's father, Mike Brigante Sr. Residents often wondered how did they got all this money and they're just working at a car shop. Kevin and Karen can't keep out of people's business, is what it is. Then, through their connections, they found out they paid for the house in cash. Now, those of you who watch Living Next to a Monster or some of these little shows about what's going on right next door from you will be hip to the wickedness that goes on in people's neighborhoods. Now, they also said this.
The way that the dealership was a front for the mob was it consisted of money laundering, body disposal, evidence disposal, where they would melt weapons down in the body shop's melting pot. It was a front. It did the dirty business of organized crime.
Now, all these neighbors are in an uproar. And these neighbors actually are having secret meetings. They was especially disturbed at Big Ronnie and Butch, his son, shooting guns off of their property. There often be huge, loud arguments from the residents, too. And it's also said that Big Ronnie was using the boat, smashing all around, dealing drugs, getting some of these people's kids on drugs. And you mess with somebody's kids, bingo, it's a wrap. Never mind that they never wanted this Italian family living in their neighborhood. Big Ron would often urinate and hit plain sight in front of people. You know, he'd just pull out and just start urinating. Now, they would get in arguments with Big Ronnie and Butch. And Big Ronnie and Butch would threaten to kill them. Now that, double with their background, the double whammy. And anybody who understands family and life and loves their family and loves their life can tell where this is going. Now, at this particular time, Butch was getting so deep into this guns, it disturbed the neighborhood. He's shooting at mailboxes from his bedroom window, from other windows. He's showing off guns and telling everybody who would want to listen that he's trying to get a silencer. Now, there's also rumors that Butch is breaking into people's houses. Stuff is found in his house that disappeared from other people's houses, allegedly. Now, to give you an idea of just how playful and / deadly this was, once Big Ronnie's chilling in the pool. But this is according to a lot of the neighbors. So Big Ronnie is chilling in the pool, and Butch comes and throws a cherry bomb at him. Big Ronnie falls off his raft. He's a little scared, so he's a little, prideful, and he's a little hot. Butch jumps in his car and smashes away after seeing his father's face. Big Ronnie jumps in the car, and his wife's car is blocking him. So he just ran right through the British family's yard, destroying all kind of property, all kind of damage, and things of that nature. Now, he done peeled out on their yard. He's doing donuts in their yard and tearing up their stuff and leaving skid marks all through the driveway. I mean, You just gotta understand just what this community was dealing with. They're not used to people driving fast through this community. This is a 10-mile-per-hour drive community. Now picture the dust fumes all over the place. They're on their front patio at this time. These people, the British, are in shock. Their property is damaged. About 30 minutes later, Big Ronnie coming back. He didn't get a chance to catch his son, but Mr. England was waiting outside for him, and he wanted to talk to him and asked him who's going to pay for this damaged property. And he said, "You're rich, you pay for it." Now, where I'm from, them's fighting words. Now, this dude didn't want no part of this Mafia family. Now, this particular situation left the British in complete disgust. That particular night in question, the Defeos started arguing, which further angered the British. At this point, something had to be done. Butch understands that they don't want him there. So Butch rubs it in their face. You know how that goes. You know somebody don't like what you're doing and you want to step it up a little bit more. He also knows that family knows he's mobbed up, and he's using that to his full advantage. Now this community has had enough, but they don't know how to fight this situation. They know these people are mobbed up. They begin to have secret meetings that not everybody is invited to. And if you need to look somewhere, you look no further than your front door. There's a safe street somewhere around you where they have meetings all the time and you ain't invited. And guess what? There may be something you doing that's upsetting the neighborhood. Everybody knew in that neighborhood that Defeo's father, Mike Brigante Sr., has ties to Carlo Gambino. It was well known. The Sicilian monster that controlled the Gambino crime family at one time. So they know that, and they also know that Rocco Defeo's brother is Peter Defeo, who is a soldier in the Genovese crime family and works closely with Vito Genovese. Closely. This is known to these people. You got to understand, this was a different time. Now, these people came together and talked of what they can do about this family. And Kevin British said, "I will approach Ronnie and I will try to talk to him again about how we feel." And that's what he does. The issue, though, is Big Ronnie didn't want to hear none of that ish. In fact, he snapped, pulling a handgun, putting the weapon right in Kevin British's face. Now, this needs no explanation. Just judging from Big Ronnie's temperament and his spirit, he told dude to get the F up out of there and called him a few names. More than likely. Now, what's rumored to be said is that he told him, "We'll kill your whole family. Your whole family will be disintegrated." So, being men and women from certain neighborhoods, we already know how this goes. Now, when you're in a city, a neighborhood, for hundreds and hundreds of years, you're gonna have some type of pull. So Kevin British decides to call a powerful member in his family and tells them what's going on with the Defeo family. Now, a sprinkle of this and a pinch of that from residents to citizens to law enforcement begin to meet secretly to discuss how to get rid of this family that's bringing down the property in their eyes. Now, when you get a bunch of citizens, a bunch of congressmen, a bunch of police together, they usually don't agree on much. But they all agreed that the Defeo family had to go from hell to high water. Or should I say, come hell to high water. Moving along. Now, the topic of the meeting ended up being, how can we get rid of this family and not make a move out? Kill this family before they kill us. These people knew that these guys had well-organized crime members in their family, and that just getting them put out their house would not do. There'd be some type of retaliation. So they are trying to figure out a way to kill this family without it coming back to them. And that's when Mr. Kevin British tells the attendees of the meeting that his family has lived in this town for years upon years. And once even owned the houses the Defeos were living on. In other words, Kevin British took the gloves off and said it's time to get real. All of them agreed they couldn't deal with that madness no more. They tell the attendees they need to make this happen to protect their families, to protect the community, and protect their town, and more importantly, to protect their necks. Must protect your neck. Then, of course, Mr. British continues. Start talking about a secret group that funds people, trains people, and equips people to deal with the likes of organized crime. Now, for those who think that this is far-fetched, let me talk to you for a minute. Give me an ear. In the 70s and 80s is where the government went full-fledged, we're taking out the mafia. That's when they started giving them crazy bids and people started flipping and started snitching. They made a concrete effort to get rid of the mafia, in which doing so, burying their secrets, the government's secrets. Let that sink in. And you ain't got to do the research, because I'm going to try to help you out. I'm going to do the homework for you. I'm going to put it up here. What you first got to understand is this started in 1970. And the government had a full-fledged war on the mafia. These people would show up as TV repairmen to plant bugs around the mafia.
October 15, 1970 was one of the most important dates in mob history. But at the time, most mobsters and their defense attorneys didn't know it. This was the date RICO, or the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, was signed into law by then-President Richard Nixon. Carl Sifakis writes that prior to RICO, a top mafioso or two was forced to do a short prison stretch, terms, as they said, they could do sitting on their heads. To say it another way, law enforcement might bust a low-level guy or two every once in a while, but they were rarely able to get a boss. After the restructuring of the American Mafia in the 1930s, a simple tenet of criminal law had been exploited. Guy Lawson and former NYPD detective William Oldham explain, a man could only be charged, tried, and convicted for crimes he personally committed. Historically, common law held a defendant responsible only for his own actions. If a mob boss didn't pull the trigger, if he could plausibly deny instructing a hitman to murder a victim, it was hard to make a case against him. There were conspiracy laws, but they were extremely difficult to prove because of the strict rules of evidence and hearsay. To put it simply, prior to RICO, the law had a lot of bark but very little bite. Enter G. Robert Blakey, who worked with Senator John McClellan. Under the latter's leadership, the government conducted the Select Committee on Improper Activities in Labor and Management. The committee got the nickname the Valachi hearings due to the top witness for the feds, Joseph Valachi, the first major mobster of one of the 5 families to flip. This committee investigated organized crime activities across America and centered on Teamster head and mob associate Jimmy Hoffa and other leading mobsters of the era, such as Sam Giancana of Chicago. Blakey drafted the RICO Act, Title IX of the Organized Crime Control Act of 1970, as a result of the committee's failure to secure anything major as a result of the hearings. RICO was considered landmark legislation in American criminal law and, according to prosecutors, finally gave the dog teeth. The law got its nickname from the main character, Rico Bandello, in the 1930 Hollywood film Little Caesar. RICO allowed prosecutors to connect the different elements of a criminal enterprise together to tell the story behind the scene. RICO wasn't about convicting a single defendant. The purpose was to cripple the whole organization. Numerous charges could be brought against multiple defendants. Hearsay evidence became admissible. Associative evidence was allowed, the demonstration of guilt by association. To put it more succinctly, if a defendant profited off the crimes of an organization, even if he was not directly involved with the crime himself, he could be charged as a co-conspirator. Blakey tried to demonstrate how he had created an intricate system of rewards and punishments to entice wise guys to turn into snitches. Prosecutions would then go all the way up the chain of command. The law sat on the shelf for nearly a decade, though Blakey tirelessly held seminars for law enforcement and prosecutors, introducing them to the finer points of the legislation. Finally, in 1982, federal prosecutors used the law against Cleveland crime boss James Licavoli. Licavoli, along with 15 others, were arrested, tried, and convicted under RICO. Licavoli got 17 years in federal prison. He died in his jail cell a few years later in 1985. Federal prosecutors were elated to say the least. RICO had done its job. Now it was time to turn to bigger fish, the heads of the 5 families who controlled New York's underworld. Carl Sifakis continues. The top echelon gangsters of these groups were astonished and outraged that they could be convicted under RICO by their very membership in the Mafia or the National Commission. But RICO did other things than just help with convictions. It also allowed for asset seizure, a first in American jurisprudence. Again citing William Oldham, assets were seized, turning mobster millionaires into penitent paupers. Sentences were meted out in decades, not years. The prospect of life in jail was not enough under the guidelines. Life sentences could be multiplied for every murder count. Lives mounted on lives unto eternity. Just the threat of a long prison term caused many gangsters to flip, becoming witnesses for the government. If a mobster was facing multiple life sentences, he could cooperate and have a chance for freedom and a new life. RICO's blend of long prison sentences and incentives for cooperators, coupled with the witness protection program, made the logic of becoming a rat simple. Rat or rot became the motto of federal prosecutors. In short, omerta, the gangster code of silence, was for many flushed down the toilet. Using evidence obtained by the FBI, 11 organized crime figures, including the heads of New York's so-called 5 families, were indicted by United States Attorney Rudolph Giuliani under RICO on charges including extortion, labor racketeering, and murder for hire. The case struck a devastating blow against the Commission, the mob's ruling board of directors. The Commission case, as the prosecution was known, was the beginning of the end for the modern Mafia. Time magazine called it the case of cases, noting that it was the most significant assault on the infrastructure of organized crime since the high command of the Chicago Mafia was swept away in 1934, and quoted Giuliani's stated intention, "Our approach is to wipe out the 5 families."
Moving along. Mr. British continued to explain there ain't no turning back once we bring these people in, and we all must agree. And no matter what happens, no one gives any information to anybody, including their kids. Now listen to me. Once you make a deal like this, you better stick to it. Now, everybody in that meeting agreed. And then Mr. British informed them that if you betray this pact, there will be nowhere to hide in the whole wide country. At last, the meeting was adjourned. And 7 days later exactly, the secret group met again. But this time with an additional person who called himself, who introduced himself to the people as Agent Smith. Agent Smith begins to explain to these people the measures that they're trying to take to make sure that this is done correctly. He goes into detail about the plan to murder the 6 members of the family as they sleep, and set up the oldest son, Butch, as the murderer of the rest of the 6. Now, when I tell you these people hold grudges, they hold grudges. Now, let's not forget all Butch's mad behavior, all the arrests, all the threats. Everybody in the neighborhood thought he was a troubled child, and he was the perfect patsy. Y'all don't get it. This happens way more than you expect. It's called gang stalking. And what some believe of what happened to Miss Jenkins, I believe it was Kanika Jenkins. Now, this is when it gets tricky. Agent Smith explains that the government has a special classified military directed energy weapon that murders people through the walls without creating physical evidence. And for those who don't believe that that's possible, in 1974, they was doing that in the late 40s and in the 50s with the death ray. This is why the whole armor of God is needed. The weapons that they construct against you are unimaginable. They're unimaginable. Moving along. This agent also explained to them after the murders took place, children and all, they were sending a special force, a cleanup crew, if you will. This cleanup crew will make this look as if Butch killed his family and reposition the lifeless bodies to make it appear so. Now this ray, according to plan, is supposed to hit Butch and incapacitate him and make it where he can't move. Now that's what this is supposed to do. Leave him helpless for minutes on end. Now with this weapon that totally just destroys your mind, destroys your brain, he can't even explain what happened that night. And this is why he has so many different stories. And with his reputation, like I said before, he will be considered guilty even before the trial began. And that's what their plan was. Their plan that was indeed successful, might I add. But wait, it gets worse. Now here come the details where the devil is. Smith tells them, we will do this for you, but you must do something for us. We must draw suspicion away from the nature of the murders and into something completely different. He explains that they use their mass connections through real estate, business, to lure a crackpot family to former Defeos resident and tricked him into believing the house is haunted. So then you have to ask yourself, which we'll get to later, how do they even know who's a crackpot? What is the criteria, according to this secret government, to who is a crackpot? Move it along. So then they use classified sonic harassment technology, which was used to deceive these people into believing that the house was haunted. Now, Smith assures them that this family, nothing will happen to this family, and within 30 days, without a doubt, he could get them to move out. This is meant to draw people's attention away from the weird and bizarre way that these murders took place, because it doesn't add up no way other than this, how this is explained, unless there were 3 or 4 other people involved. These haunted houses, these UFO sightings and abductions, is to keep people's mind away from social issues. The whole reason social engineering was created. It draws them more into things that can't be proven, things that can be argued, things that are good party talk, things that will consume the brain of somebody a little bit abnormal, more attention to details, but somebody who doesn't pay attention to details, it'll at least be conversation for them. You guys understand what is at work here? Do you get it? These people are wicked. But wait, there's more. Now, they get away with just saying, we need to create something for the crazies to do. And this occupies them, so it keeps the rest of us safe. They actually believe if these crazy people weren't chasing UFOs, chasing ghosts, that they put the rest of us all in danger. These people are social architects, manufacturing tragedy and hoaxes, and they've been doing this for a long time. To be truth, and we'll get into this a little later, they was doing this with the psychics back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, but in different ways. Moving along. But just before we do, it's just a recap. So the so-called crazies, the ghost chasers and the UFO chasers, they create the smoke screen for the government. There's so much madness is talked back and forth. That's why I say when you hear too many stories, you know it's coming from one of them alphabets. Moving along. Now, no one would expect the neighbors in this situation. It's the haunted house. It's the son went crazy on drugs. These are smoke screens. They felt like it would neutralize the Mafia family. The family members that was Mafia would start hearing all this stuff about ghosts and the kid going crazy, and also they'd be grieving for their grandchildren and their son and daughter. Wicked. And if you still have questions, just know they wanted these people gone. The Mafia wielded a lot of power in 1974. Whatever's going on with the son, how many times do you hear about a man murdering his brothers and sisters and then his parents? All parties involved thought they'd benefit from this, but no one more than the citizens of Ocean Avenue, the city of Amityville. They also sold them on the fact that the Amityville will catch notoriety from tourism that is generated from the haunted house incident. You gotta understand, these people also have reporters on the payroll, and they can make sure that you're obsessed with something. For those of us that don't have the armor of God, that is. They was told after the second family hightailed it out of there after 30 days, people will believe it's a supernatural activity. It was a paranormal thing going on. Then they would send a third family that would move in and deny anything was going on in that house. And that third family, it's not that they wouldn't put the tricks on them. They wasn't going to put the tricks on them, but they were agents as well. You understand how this is working? It's called gang stalking. The third family would say the second family was flat out lying, which puts the people against the people. You got half of them believe it's haunted. The other half believe that it was a son that just went crazy. And they're both wrong. They understood it'd be good theater. They understood that people will be arguing on in this day, this was a very popular subject. It was on all the channels. But not only do the people of Ocean 11 believe that they'll benefit, the government gets a chance to create more hoax, test classified lethal weapons, energy weapons, non-lethal sonic harassment. They say non-lethal, but if you look at the woman and look at the people who actually lived in that house when they was making it seem like it was haunted, the second family, well, the dude from that family, he's gone. The girl is hooked up to like an oxygen machine. And the son is all kinds of he's just been, you could tell he's just been through a lot. So what was explained at the meeting, that after the third family, moves in and denies the house is haunted, there will be a short period of news media attention, and then after a while, people will just lose interest. Well, how did that work out for y'all? Now you see how untouched and unharmed these people work. Now we all know just from looking at an ant farm, if it goes unchecked and it's just left to its own device, it's just gonna grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We understand that. Now, they're under the veil because nobody even knows this technology exists. In fact, nobody can even fathom. The only person that may be able to get that at this particular time is somebody that worked in movies. Somebody that had something to do with setting stuff up. They might have been a little suspicious. A little. And with that, the deal was written in blood. Literally. No turning back at that point. Agent Smith says, and I'm gonna say this slow. Not that I know my listeners are super intelligent. I understand that. But just so we get it. He says that the government mafia is what they refer to it in this secret government. It's full of law enforcement, military personnel, and ordinary citizens. Yo, do you guys understand that? Man, if you're really powerful, you better look beside you, because Judas is somewhere there. looking front, beside. You just never know. Those of you who are here from the first power of God, what we know, what they admitted to, understand that they try to slap a Judas around you. Let's continue. Now, if you don't know, it's a valuable lesson. When you're dealing with law enforcement, you don't want to threaten their kids. Like, that's the last thing you do, especially if you got your own organization and there was some problems with the whole JFK thing where people say that was done by the Mafia or whatever the case may be. You don't really want to go after law enforcement's children. And after Butch threatened to kill the detective's daughter or the sergeant's daughter, it was on since then. It was on since they moved there, to keep it real. It was meant to happen. Now, before the departure of the meeting, Smith warns all of those that you must take this to your grave. None of this information could come out from you guys. It can't go to the public. No one outside of this room can know. And I prefer that you deal with me directly, not even with each other. Only talk to me about this. If you tell anybody about this, it's over for you. Now let me tell you something. He's giving away so much info in that statement. You gotta think about it. They got this technology. They can see through walls, they can affect you through walls, they can hear you from miles away, they can tap your phone and get directly into your conversation. And everybody who agreed upon this for the rest of their life was being monitored. You think that's crazy, don't you? You don't even understand why you need this whole armor. Let's go. See, they feared, and for good reason, that if the public of the 70s, of the 1970s figured out that they was using secret technology against its own citizens, it would start a civil war. And it would have in the 70s. And what's so cold about it, you could tell these people now and it wouldn't make them bat an eye. Because they have told in a lot of situations, not just this in particular yet, that I know of. But it's been released. If you want to piece everything together, you can find this info out there. The technology exists. This isn't far-fetched, y'all. It's the truth. Either that or the complete thing is a scam. Now let's continue. Now, Mr. British says, this fat son of a bitch will never bother me again. And the group starts clapping. A lady says, kill them all. And her husband was like, you damn straight. Mr. Smith marked them down right then. Okay, I could use these two people. Those are the people that they eventually used to move in the house the third time. They say it was a hoax. Now, Kevin British tells Agent Smith, you could use my house to conduct your electronic surveillance. Everything you need, you could do it from here. You know, anything you need, I can make it happen. Days later, a white van arrives. And another agent comes out of the van. Now, there's something about these white vans. Keep your eyes on a white van. See, they do everything by the numbers. They do everything by the colors. White's a color that's considered pure. And if you see a black van, you're going to think a little suspicious. If you see a green van, you may think a little suspicious. But if you see a white van, that's why you see a lot of companies with white vans. It's also easier for you to see, the writing on there. I'm aware of that. But it's also So they don't have a lot of problems on the road with different agents. They don't want to expose themselves unless they absolutely have to. So the guy gets out, the second agent, and Kevin is like, hey, anything you need, you can use any room you want. So they start moving the equipment in there. They start moving the thing in there to get this thing under wraps. So let's just touch on this again. Like I said before, at this time, they can look through houses, hear through houses, and even more, as we'll see. Nobody will ever know this is going on. All it takes is a pointing at the object to hear and to see through these walls. From this moment on, there is no privacy for the Defeo family. Every conversation, somebody got diarrhea, they know it. Somebody got gonorrhea, they know it. They listening and they seeing everything. So with this, of course, they study, analyze the intelligence, and make preparations for the elimination of the Defeo family. The surveillance intelligence is just ridiculous. You feel me? And that's stuff they had in 74. And I assure you they had this stuff in 74. You know, I mean, all you gotta do is a little bit of research and you'll know that. You know, you'd be surprised to know what was going on in the past time. Like somebody flying a car in the 50s. That's a fact. You know, you can't get caught up and think there's something that's new under the sun. That wasn't even enough. They even moved into a business suite near the dealership where Big Ronnie and Butch work, so they can put that under surveillance. It wasn't just about this family, it was about their whole family, who were major Mafia members. Now, the only thing that can be looked at as unconventional is the new technology they're dealing with in 74. Because they was doing this to the Mafia already. They was following them everywhere they went. They was even tapping the president. He was being followed. So don't think that this is impossible. It is not. Put on the whole armor of God. Back to the story. In addition to that, the mobsters' families, the big guys, was also under surveillance. Feeling like time is of the essence, and they learn this family pretty well, they feel like it's time to strike. So as they begin, their first goal is to target each individual with their own secret messages. Each member would think extraordinary things are going on in their life. And when they tell their friends and family about these extraordinary events that are going down in their life, they start to get suspicious of these people's mindset. This is a tour that they have been doing for years. They've done this to many of people. See, people don't ask questions like that when they think that people are crazy or have madness. They think people have illness. So the first matters of business is to make these people look like they are crackpots. And this is when it gets tricky. Because these people will use your fears, your desires, your religious beliefs as a weapon against you. So, of course, the first person targeted by these secret weapons was Big Ronnie, the head of the Defeo family. If you take off the head, the body will fall. So they target Big Ronnie. So as he is lying in bed, he hears a voice. And he turns around. He looks around and he can't see nobody. And then the voice tells him, this is God. So the so-called voice of God tells him, he has to repent so he could be cleansed of his past sins and become a righteous man. Now remember, this is 1974. This is before all these other crazy movies that might have gave you a hint to this. Hell, this is before the Amityville horror movie came out. Now, when I was a child, I took my sister's remote to play a trick on her. I went outside her bedroom and I kept cutting the TV off. She cut it on and she looked around with this suspicious look on her face. And I just kept cutting it off. She herself thought something spiritual was happening until she turned and seen me because I started laughing. That's a true story. If you eliminate all the possibilities and there's only one left, then that last possibility is probably the truth. Moving along. Now, Big Roddy believes that he has been chosen by God, that he's special. Big Roddy believes he's some type of chosen prophet and he's in direct communication with the Most High. So Big Ronnie, this big mafia kingpin, listens to the Most High that he believes is talking to him. He stops all his illegal activities and starts becoming very religious. And I'm pretty sure the Mafia just loved that. Now, Agent Smith is vastly entertained by this notion. He LOLing over there and begins to start messing with him. These are godless people that are doing their father, the devil's bidding, and as the story goes on, that will make itself more clear. Big Ronnie is told he should not spare the rod with his family and to whip them into shape, physically disciplining them. The puzzle's starting to come together now, ain't it? Or should I say, isn't it? Big Ronnie, believing this is the voice of God and will not disappoint, begins to abuse his family, physically intimidating and physically dominating this family to the point of torturous abuse. So the voice gave Roddy a schedule to keep his family on. This day you could drive the car, this day you're not allowed to drive the car. Ultimate control. He's believing these are visions, prophecies to keep him and his family safe. These tricks that they're playing on this family is evil, wicked, and demonic. The Defeos family wasn't dealing with ghosts, but they were dealing with monsters. The most deadliest monster, the most deadly animal alive, the human male. Or should I say the lack of man. Moving along. Now, if you got a friend that comes back to you and tells you, yeah, God is dealing with me, he's giving me these visions, he's giving me these strengths. It all depends on what your circle's about. But you gotta remember who Big Ronnie's circle is. These are these mafia, these are these gangsters, these are these people who are believing that this man is losing his mind. Now, at the same time, Butch is being targeted as well by a voice that's telling him over and over to kill his family. Now, there was different measures taken in both. While with Big Ronnie, it was a clear voice telling him, loud even. With Butch, it's whispers, faint sound that's barely heard, that you could almost only hear subconsciously. This is how Butch was targeted. And as the time went on, said voice got louder and louder and louder and louder. Now Butch was always the one up the latest because he was doing drugs and whatnot. And he kept hearing what he thought was his family moving around. And he goes up there and nobody's up. And he just thinks, man, this is some really good shit I got.
Well, when I first moved in, we started hearing noises and different things at night. Noise, like he thought somebody might have been walking around, pipes banging. Or they would always think somebody's in the house, closed door. Once in a while you'd hear screaming, but there wasn't nobody screaming.
He thought that he heard members of his family and the other ones conspiring to kill him.
Now after this, the mother, Louise Defeos, she was targeted. She kept hearing voices saying that the whole family's gonna die. Now this is cruel and unusual punishment for sure. And I know a lot of people may think, well, why would they have to go through all that? People, you gotta pay attention to the fact that they want these people to look like crazy crackpots. They want them to run and tell this, which people will do naturally.
The housekeeper to the Defeos family stated to me on several occasions during the trial that Mrs. Defeos told her that there was going to be a terrible tragedy occurring to her family.
Back to Big Ronnie, who's starting to put these religious shrines all over his lawn so he can worship God as the voice commanded him.
In a show of devotion, Mr. Defeos surrounds the house with religious statuary.
Now, Big Ronnie got a shrine in his room that he prays to. He's seen outside praying to these shrines, and which we know is straight devilish anyway. But we're talking about a gangster who believes that God is talking to him. And when people ask him why he's doing such things, he said it's because God has commanded it to him. Now, Big Ronnie, unknown to himself, is mocked in that neighborhood because all the neighbors who are at this meeting sees him doing all this stuff and knows that the plan is working. They find it hilarious. Agent Smith loves the mockery. He loves the fact that he is playing God to these people. He gets off on this. Now, to further put Big Ronnie, the father, and Butch, the eldest son, against each other, while Big Ronnie is praying to a shrine, the voice of God tells him to drive to Canada and bring back a priest to perform rituals to drive evil forces out of the house, and that Butch is possessed by the devil. And this is the way to get these forces out of your house. Now, Butch is ecstatic that he feels God is putting him on these crusades, like anybody would be called by the voice of the Most High, the true Most High, that is.
As they felt the devil was in the house. He actually brought all that religion into the house.
Mr. Defeos went to St. Joseph's Shrine 6 months before he was murdered to bring back a priest who would say the prayers of exorcism in his home.
Now this presents an excellent opportunity for Agent Smith to further send the Defeos down the rabbit hole and defraud a priest. So in front of the priest and the Defeos family themselves, the priest turns ill as things fly off the shelf. Only for a split second, but it happened nonetheless. Now, ultrasonic is above human hearing, but infrasonic is below human hearing, which I was explaining earlier. Now, the sound of beam is also referred to as sonic laser. It can be ultrasonic laser or infrasonic laser, as we was just saying. Just nail that point home. A sonic laser passing through a ceramic bowl creates enough force to knock it off the table. I mean, this was going on in the 70s, and I'm gonna be honest with you. This was going on in the late 60s. This is just a more powerful version of what's been going on all along. Now let's get back to the priest, Big Ronnie and Louise. Now they are shocked. They witnessed this happen before their face. So the priest tells them straight up, hey, this is above my pay grade. They don't pay me to handle this stuff. This is too high for me. He's gonna have to call for some assistance. Now, that's a no-go. Because like I said, this group of people that is pulling this on the Defeos family are well connected. And they make sure that no priest go through there that can actually make something draw more attention that they're seeking out. Now, as the priest is getting ready to leave, Butch arrives. And Agent Smith, thinking perfect time to put this technology on Butch again. And the priest again. So what he does is the closer Butch gets, the higher the beam is turned up on the priest, targeted his stomach. As Butch gets closer and closer and closer, this excruciating pain comes over this priest. And this has happened in this house a lot of times. This ain't the only priest that has had these type of issues. So the priest, holding his stomach in one hand and clutching his crucifix in the other, just starts backing away. It just moves towards the front door. It just leaves. Wouldn't even shake Butch's hand. At this point, even Butch is confused on what the heck is going on. Now, as the priest leaves, he slams the door behind him. This is how wicked this got. Now, Big Roddy, being quite upset, runs in there, decides he gonna beat the devil out of his son as he slams him up against the wall, yelling at him that you're the devil. You're the devil. And Butch is just like, you are nuts. Butch has got to think that this family is crazy. Needless to say, the priest never came back. So then he hit him with the voice of God and said, now you know that your son is the devil.
By the early days of November 1974, tensions in the household reach a breaking point.
Just days before the murders, he and his father had an argument where his father referred to him as a devil. It came close to blows. Ronnie stormed out.
One documented incident about this family. It's two incidents really. Around the same time, possibly even the same, like a week. Now, they were sitting at dinner and they used the voice of God to tell him to beat the devil out of his son. And he just hauls off and cold clocks his son and just starts beating him. Later on, they made the so-called voice of God attack his wife. Told him to attack his wife, in which he beat her badly. This is what the armor of God is needed. If you know this Bible, if you know this law, and you living by these laws, and you living by this Bible, you can't be hit with this. Especially with eyes open now on what's going on. You know it's against the law to take off on your wife. And if you let some voice talk you into that, then you not following these laws. Because any man of God's going to be like, okay, I'm wicked. I don't know why I'm thinking this wicked right now, but let me get up out of here. Let me work out. Let me do something to shake that spirit up off me. The friends and family starts to believe that these people are insane. The family believes the father is crazy. The father believes that the family is demonic. He's even just starting to believe that his wife is cheating on him. because of the voice of God told him so. Now, Butch has had enough. Butch said, I am leaving, I am out of here, which almost erupts the whole program, the whole plan. That's why my big mama used to say, always follow your first mind. So, they need Butch back in that home and in a bad way. They start sending Big Ronnie messages from the voice of God to get your son back in the home. The apocalypse is coming and you need your whole family to survive. If you keep this family together, I will bless you and make you a king on this earth. So Big Ronnie explains every detail of all the messages he's been getting from God, about them being the only surviving family, about him being the next Moses. And naturally, Butch is, wow, this man is crazy. Butch didn't want no parts of that. Butch had moved out. Butch had gotten married. The voice of God told Big Ronnie exactly where Butch was, which furthered the belief. You got voices and now you telling me exactly where he is. Well, we all know the surveillance provided where he really was. Big Ronnie goes in there and physically forces Butch to come home because he thought this was God's will. So much like he told Butch, he told his father, he told his uncle, he told his cousins, he told his nephews, which everyone thought he was out of his skull. Now they go and to set these people against each other. The oldest daughter, Dawn, the love of her life, mysteriously gets this great paying job in Florida and moves and wants to take her with him. They want to get married. But the father forbids it. And she tells this man that she wished she could kill her father. That's all they needed. That's all they needed. And that's what they've been waiting for. Those type of talks to be said. Butch, with all the abuse he was getting, had uttered that plenty of times around town to certain people. So if there was ever an investigation, guess what? They got leads to follow. Now with all this, through all this, they still couldn't get the family to kill each other. And that's what the original plan was, to try to get the family to kill each other. No matter how bad it got, they would not do that. That's one of the biggest things of America, turn their enemies against each other. But it didn't work. At least at that point, the technology wasn't good enough to do that. So they formed a plan to strike November 12th, 1974, where they put a hit team, a strike team together to kill the Defeos family. So they assembled with this new technology. They want to stage the assault of the Defeos family, to get this classified weapon and beam the electricity at these people's chests, putting them in cardiac arrest immediately. Butch will be the only one not targeted. He will be immobilized by direct energy weapons, and it will also distort him by targeting his head. They planned this for months, y'all, for months, to kill this family. So what they do is send a clean up team in there to reposition everybody's body. Now they took Butch's rifle. They built a secret silencer for that rifle. And they went from room to room, killing the family. Butch woke up all distorted, not understanding what happened, just bits and pieces. And they had an agent give him a rifle. And Butch testified that a demon gave him a rifle, and a demon dead. It was a agent. Devil the Bible speaks of. And the rest, as they say, is history.